Good evening. Today we are learning Maseches Sanhedrin Daf Ayin Vav. We'll be starting 5 lines down at the end of the line with the word E, and we'll be ending at the Mishnah on Ayin Vav Amud Beis. As you can see, the next blot is actually relatively short, which speaks nothing of its complexity, but it's more manageable than most of the blot that we've seen here in Maseches Sanhedrin. What we're going to do today is really jump in the middle of an analysis of a brisa. The brisa that we're analyzing is on the bottom of Ayin Hamid Aleph. And there was a cryptic line there that spoke about the fact that there was a similarity between Zecharim and Nekevos. And the Zecharim and Nekevos, according to one approach, was that there were similarities between her relatives and his relatives. That is the assumption that we are going to be questioning over the first part of the Gemara. And says the Gemara, you wanted to say that Zecharim are like Nekevos, and therefore the halachos that apply by her relatives apply by his too. Says the Gemara, Imahu kalaso asura. By him, his kala is asura. His daughter-in-law is going to be asur even after his son were to die. Afhi, maybe the same thing is true by her family, that he, the husband, cannot marry the daughter-in-law kalaso asura. So let's just paint the picture here. A regular daughter-in-law is easy to understand. It's my son's wife. But my wife's daughter-in-law is my wife's son, my stepson. So right, my wife's son's wife. My wife's what?
Nothing.
In fact, it is nothing. So that's what the Gemara is saying is the problem. You want to equate him to her. You want to say Zecharim are like Nekevos, but my daughter-in-law will be asura to me forever and ever. But my wife, my stepson's wife, will be totally muteris once my stepson, if he dies. So then I can marry her. That's what the Gemara says. They say,
Only if a divorce wouldn't make them with her.
oh, a divorce might also solve the problem.
Yeah, it's not like.
Yeah, I don't know because it's yeah, it's probably mutter.
Sisters is right, but otherwise.
Sister's exception to what rule? The what?
Can't marry a sister even if unless she died.
Even if she dies?
Even if.
No.
Unless? Right. Oh, right. Oh, you're saying by divorce you're talking about. Yes.
That's special sister.
Right. So this is why the Gemara has a problem with the brisa. Because the brisa on the bottom of Ayin Hamid Aleph wanted to equate Zecharim to Nekevos, and the Havamina was that their halachos are the same. But we see that by his daughter-in-law versus his wife's daughter-in-law, that the halachos are not the same. So Abaye gives a really easy answer, and Rava gives a really difficult answer. Abaye's answer is easy. Amar Abaye Amar Kra, Eishes bincha hi. It is the wife of your son. So this is the man's daughter-in-law directly. Mishum Eishes bincha tamechaybo v'atamechaybo mishum Eishes bina. Really, it should be Zecharim like Nekevos. However, in this case, we have Gzeras HaKasub. The Torah teaches us that Eishes bincha is different than the daughter-in-law of your wife. So that's a relatively easy answer. Still not easy. Rava goes to town like we saw yesterday about the different forms of Gzeros Shava. And let's get into this answer of Rava. Rava Amar, Vein la'aman Amar don mina umina. No matter how you hold in regards to the Gzeros Shava, if you hold that the Gzeros Shava is structured that both, and I'm going to translate as we did yesterday, both the Isser and the Onesh transfer through the Gzeros Shava, Vein la'aman Amar don mina va'oki ba'asra. Or according to the one who says that the Isser transfers, but the Onesh doesn't transfer, lo asya. You could not say such a svara of mahu kalaso asura, afi kalaso asura. Why not? Let's go through both of the different forms of drashos. Lemanda amar don mina umina. According to the shita that we learned Gzeira Shava, to include the Isser and the Onesh, that both will transfer into the world of the daughter-in-law. Mahu kalaso asura. We would have argued, of course, we're going to say this doesn't work, but we would have argued that just like my daughter-in-law is asura to me, afhinami, for my wife too, kalaso asura, her daughter-in-law is asur to me. Umina, what's the second part of the Gzeira Shava that comes over the bridge? We know the Isser, what's the Onesh? Mahu beskila, afhinami beskila. Well, says the Gemara, that can't be. Because Lamanda Amar Skila Chamura, last short line, according to the one who says Skila Chamura, which is the Rabbanan, remember our Machlokas from 25, 30 blot ago, The Rabbanon hold that the rank of the capital punishments is skila, shreifa, harag, and chenek, and Reb Shimon argues. According to the one that says that skila is more chamura, ikal mifrach, we have a problem. Malahu, on his side of the family, shekain imo beskila. His mother is going to be, if a man were to cohabit with his mother, he would be chayiv skila. Tomar behi she ima besreifa. In regards to her, if the husband slept with his mother-in-law, that would be sreifa. And we're learning from aim over to kala. So that makes the gzera shava uneven because the punishments are not the same. Whereas by the daughters-in-law, the havamin of the Gemara is that they're both beskila. Over here, one would be beskila, one would be besreifa. So that means the kal and the chomer don't have the same halachos. The onshim are not the same. And furthermore, bita besreifa vekalasa beskila, says the Gemara that his wife's daughter would, if a man sleeps with his wife's daughter, so that's a stepdaughter, he gets sreifa. But if he sleeps v'kalasa, if he sleeps with the daughter-in-law, he gets skila. That's backwards. Why is that backwards? Because according to the Manda Amar that skila is chamor, why would skila go to the more distant relative, right? So you have a man who either slept with his daughter, and he slept with his wife's daughter and got sreifa, or slept with his wife's daughter-in-law, which is one more steps removed, and technically that's a woman who he could have married in theory. So there's skila. This doesn't make any sense at all. You got the Yisurim backwards. You got the Onshim backwards. Says the Gemara, and this answer just requires time. I can actually show you precedents where we see that there is an anomaly in regards to giving over these punishments. Debito besreifa, a man who sleeps with his own daughter gets sreifa, vekalaso beskila. Here we see that the punishments are reversed. With his own daughter, he gets sreifa, but with his own daughter-in-law, he gets skila. Why? Skila should be chamura. So therefore, we see again that, actually, this just proves that it's possible. This just removes the ve'od. This removes the question that's on the last word of the first of the long lines. It removes that question, showing that there's precedence.
For just the regular HSH.
That's going to be skila. Sreifa is reserved for isha ubita. I mean, that's our Mishnah, right? That's the Mishnah we're talking about now. Is a bas kohen?
Skila, maybe it's just because it's the HSH. It's not because of the familial connection.
I don't think so. I don't think that's correct. I think that the Isser is that it is familial. That's her title, is Kalaso.
The wife of his stepson?
Wife of his son.
Well, wife of his son, I just said stepson. I know.
That's on the other side of the family. That's on the wife's side. Ella. So now the Gemara just lays down the law and asks its question. Mahu, in regards to his side of the family, lo chalakta bo bein imo lekalaso. When we're learning the kal v'chomer, on the side where we learn from a mother, there's no difference between a mother and a kala, both beskila. Afi, on the other side, on the women's side of the family, lo tachlog ba bein ima lekalasa, but that's not, in fact, the case. His wife's daughter or his wife's daughter. Hold on a second. Which is not the case. So what we therefore see is that the kal v'chomer, according to this first approach, is very, very difficult. It doesn't work at all because the punishments are not the same for ima, which is where we're learning from. And all of that assumed like the Rabbanan that skila was chamor. Uleman da'amar sreifa chamura. According to the Shita of Reb Shimon, that sreifa is more chamor than skila. Mehai kushya lo nidonin. From this one question, where we're going to see that sreifa is out of order, so therefore we also could not possibly say the havamina that zecharim and nekevos are equals, and the punishments that are true by a man's wife's children or daughter-in-law are also true by the man's daughter-in-law himself. And all of that was under the umbrella of donin mino mina, by the type of kal v'chomer that learns both the Isser and the Onesh from the same kal v'chomer. Ulman da'amar don mina ba'oki be'asra. And even according to the Shita, that the Gzeira Shava is one where we are Don Mina. We do learn from the case of aim to the case of daughter-in-law. We do learn the Isser, but Va'oki Be'asra, we don't include the Isser. So says the Gemara, Mahu Kalaso Asura. What would we have wanted to say that just like on his side of the family, his daughter-in-law is Asura? Afi Kalaso Asura. The same thing would be true of his wife's daughter-in-law. Ve'oki be'asra, what would we say about the onesh? Asam hu de beskila, aval hacha besreifa kede ashkechan be'ima. So says the Gemara that with his wife's daughter-in-law there would be sreifa, just like there would have been with his wife's mother, not his mother, but with his wife's mother. So that's what the Kal V'chomer would have been according to the approach of Vu'uki Be'asra. But within here, we also have to look at this both from the lens of the Rabbanan who holds Skila is Chamura, and from the lens of Reb Shimon who holds that Sreifa is Chamura. Third of the way down, 5 lines into the wide lines. Almost out of the woods. Lemanda Amar Skila Chamura, according to the Rabbanan who hold that Skila is more Chamur, Ika Lemifrach, we have a problem with your Kal V'chomer. Malahu, just like on the man's side, Shekain Imo Beskila, Tomar Behi, on her side, She'imo Besreifa. So we see that the punishments are not similar. Ve'odin, furthermore, Mahu Chalaktavo, Bein Bito Lekalaso, just like on his side of the family, there's a difference between Bito and Kalaso, between his daughter and daughter-in-law. Afi, we would have thought that on the mother's side, Tachlog ba bein bito lechalasa, that there would have been a difference there as well, which is not in fact the case. And we were trying this whole time to try and say, this was what we started with today, on the 5th line of the Gemara, 6th line, Imahi kalasa hu kalaso asura, afi kalaso asura, trying to equate the din of daughters-in-law, says the Gemara, you can't say that at all according to this approach of the Rabbanan. And ulamanda amar nami chamura, sreifa chamura, and even according to Reb Shimon, who says that Sreifa is Chamura, Mehai Kushya Lo Nidonin. From the fact that we see that from this question of Ika Lemifrach, it also ruins the possibility of saying this Kal V'chomer, because again, the Onshim are not the same. So all of that is to say, a big question on the Gemara, on the Brisa that we learned yesterday at the bottom of Ayin Hamid Aleph, as to whether or not we say that there's an equivalence between Zecharim and Nekevos. There is an equivalence, we just have to figure out exactly what it is. We had answered yesterday that, remember the 3 generations, we had said that the 3 generations is teaching us that the wife and then the 2 daughters, and then the wife upwards also, and the mother and the grandmother. So that was what one approach in the Gemara was. Oh, you know what? That was Lamata and Lamala. That was not the same thing. Okay, let's come back to where we are here. We're halfway down on Ayin Vav Amid Aleph, and says the Gemara, Bita me anusaso minayin. Let's say that somebody violated his daughter, Bito me anusaso, from the child that she had, out of him having violated her minayin. Amar Abai Kal V'chomer. Al Bas Bito Anush. We know that on a granddaughter, a man would be punished for cohabiting with his granddaughter. Al bito lo kol shekain, all the more so on his own daughter. So therefore we know that if a man violates his own daughter forcibly, then he's going to be punished. So asks the Gemara, but it doesn't say it in Chumash. V'chi onshin min adin. We know that we have a principle, which seemingly there are a lot of overrides, but the concern of the Gemara is that we're not onshin min adin. You can't make a kal v'chomer to apply a punishment to someone. Says the Gemara, don't worry. This kal v'chomer that we just said is a gilui milsa be'almahu. It's like 2 pashut. If a man cohabits with his granddaughter and we say that he's going to be punished, need I say that he will be punished for sleeping with his daughter? Yes, it's a kal v'chomer because it's rational, but it's just a gilui milsa. So there's a difference between a kal v'chomer that's megala something new versus a kal v'chomer that's megala something obvious. So this kal v'chomer is being megala something obvious. What's the kal v'chomer? If we say that a man is going to be punished for bas bito, for sleeping with his granddaughter, well, guess what? It's Captain Obvious. Obviously, if you sleep with your daughter, you're going to be punished. That type of kal v'chomer is just basic rational common sense and doesn't even require a kal v'chomer, but the Gemara is using that language. So this doesn't trigger the aspect of onshin min adin, and afal pi that the pasuk is not crystal clear about this case of violation. Nevertheless, the father would be chayiv in this case. Rava says no. The reason why we know about bito me'anusaso is Amar li Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi asya hena asya zima zima. This we spoke about yesterday in regards to the double gzeira shava of hena and zima zima, which connecting first pasuk number 1 to pasuk number 2, and then pasuk number 2 to pasuk number 3. That is how we would then know that bito me'anusaso is going to be asura. Another possible answer, Tani Avuad Reb Avin. Because we don't really have a mari makom for a man who violates his daughter. That's why the Torah went out of its way to say ubas ish kohen with the extra word of ish. Ima bas kohen hi besreifa. If a bas kohen, she is the one who went out and was inappropriate, she gets sreifa. Ve'ein bo'ala besreifa. And the man who cohabited with her does not get sreifa. Af bito me'anusaso, the same thing would be true about a man who violates his daughter. He besreifa, ve'ein bo'ala besreifa. Is that what you're going to say? Of course, that's not going to be the case. So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Amar Kra, Esavia hi mechaleles, Misha mechaleles esavia, Yatze sazu she'aviva mechalela. When a woman, a bas kohen, is mechaleles esavia, she is the one who goes out inappropriately. She brings about the scenario. Then she gets sreifa. Yatze sazu, what's excluded from sreifa? She'aviva mechalala. Yes, the daughter did something wrong, but she did something wrong by coercion. It wasn't her choice. So it's maybe the same two people involved. But if the bas kohen is seichel liznos, if she's behaving inappropriately and that leads to something, then she's going to get sreifa. But if a man violates her, even if she's a kohen, so that's not, then she won't get sreifa. Rava Amar, Bishlama Hasam apikte midina de bas kohen, ve'okimta adina de bas Yisrael. I could understand a case where a bas kohen cohabits with a man, and the man, as far as he's concerned, he could have equally cohabited with a bas Yisrael. It wouldn't have made a difference. But hacha, where a man is bito me'anusaso, adina deman mukmasla. How could you even look at this daughter? Would you say adina de pnuya mukmasla? We're going to consider this man who violates his daughter as a regular single girl? No way. Pashut that it's the case that there's an isser of bito me'anusasa. And based on this three-way machlokas, we had Abaye who said it's based on the pasuk. We had Rava who says that it can't be she's a pnuya, so it has to be that she's treated like a classical isser. And the azhar, because you would never get killed over tashma shemita with a pnuya. And the azhara lebito me'ons. And the last answer was the brisa of Tani Avud Reb Avin of the pasuk of Uvas Ish Kohen. So says the Gemara 3/4 of the way down. Azhara levito me'anusas minan. We understand the punishment. You've given me the examples or these three answers. Where do we get the azhara from about bito me'anusas, so that a man cannot be with his daughter in this way, which should be pasha? So says the Gemara. We actually have enough to learn the azhar and the onesh from the same pasuk. According to the third answer that we saw, because this answer quoted, the answer over there quoted the pasuk of Uvas Ish Kohen. Over there, according to him, how do we know what the azhara is? Because that's what the pasuk says, that one should not start off their daughter to be mizana. You can't set up your daughter for this type of behavior. This is not the way that we raise benos Torah. Maskif la Rabbi Yaakov achva de Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov al techalel as bitcha lehaznosa. The pasuk that you're saying, that's coming to teach us about the azhara of bito me'anusaso, that can't be. That's not what it's for. Haimi Boile says the Gemara Lichadetanya. The pasuk says al techalel es bitcha lehaznosa. How does that brisa use this pasuk? Yachol v'kohen amasi es bito lelevi v'Yisrael hakasav medaber. Maybe the Torah is saying that it's aser for a kohen to allow his daughter to marry a Levi or a Yisrael. That's pretty stark. That kohanim can only marry kohanim. That would exacerbate the shidduch crisis manyfold. You're not allowed. That says the Gemara. Maybe we would have thought that the Isra of Al Techala is Bitcha Laznosa is an isser for a Kohen to marry a Levi or Yisrael. Talmud Omer la has nosa, that the pasuk is talking about znus. We're talking about a case where a man raises his daughter to be inappropriate. Where you tell your daughter you can do as you wish, you don't even have to get married, you can cohabit with whoever you'd like. So what do we see from here? This is a kasha. This is a kasha on Rabbi Law. Rabbi Law said that according to the Tana Avodah Rav Avin, that we learn about the azhara for bito me'anusaso from the pasuk of al techalel es bitcha lehaznosa. But says the Gemara, no, that pasuk is to teach me that that it's bechilul shebiznosa kasum medaber, and not for what you said. So the Gemara says 6 lines from the bottom on Ayin Vav Amud Aleph. Himkein, if that's true, lemakra al tachel. We know the word tachel, ki seichel liznos. Why does this pasuk say al techalel with 2 lamets? It's a great question. My al techalel with 2 lamets, shma minotarte. So says the Gemara, we learn from the double lamed of al techalel, we learn 2 things. Number 1, we learn the azhara according to Tana de Rabbi Avua. We learn the azhara for bito me'anusaso. And number 2 is we learn that lahaznosa means bechilul shebiznusa kasu medaber. Not that there's a restriction for a Kohen to marry off his daughter to a Yisrael or a Levi. That's mutter. I'm sure there are Kohanim who have married Yisraelim many times over, probably most. But that's both of those things can be learned over here. What's that isser? It's not that, but rather that a man should not set up his daughter's life in a way where she is involved in znus. Now, that means that according to Tana Avuha de Rabbi Avin, that the azhara is learned from that pasuk of al techalel, from the double lamed. But we already said that the azhara was learned out from Abaye v'Rava in the pasuk that they were talking about earlier. So Abaye v'Rava, what then do you do with this pasuk? Hi al techalel es bitcha le'aznosa, my avdile. How do you learn that pasuk of al techalel? So Amar Rebbe Mani, ze hamasi es bito lezaken. Fascinating idea. The Gemara says that a man should not marry off his daughter to an old man. A man should not marry off his daughter to an old man who has no interest in tashmish amita. Why? Because if she doesn't feel that her needs are taken care of at home, she'll go elsewhere. And that is what the pasuk means. Al techalel es bitcha lehaznosa. It's an isser for a man to marry off his daughter to an older man, someone who is not interested in tashmish amita. Kidatanya, al techalel es bitcha le'aznosa. Again, this is how Abaye and Rava would understand this pasuk. Rabbi Lazar Omer zamasi es bito lezaken. Rabbi Kiva Omer zamash bito bogeres. That's when a man doesn't let his daughter get married young. A bogeres is 12 and a half years, 13 years old. She's a child. So this isser seemingly no longer applies. Or we don't hold like Rabbi Akiva. But Rabbi Akiva held that there's an isser. This is an amazing idea. Could you imagine if this applied? Rabbi Akiva held that there's an isser to be mashe bito bogeres. That if you say to your daughter, you can't get married till you're 15. Rabbi Akiva held that that's an isser d'oraisa of al techalel es bitcha lehaznosa. Because as her desires grow, if she has no one with whom to cohabit, then she'll find access to other people, which is znus. I just can't imagine a world like that. So says the Gemara, that's how they learn the pasuk. And then a shtickle drasha on the same idea. Amar Rav Kahana mishum Rabbi Akiva. Ein lecha ani b'Yisrael ela rasha arum v'hamashe bito bogeres. The poor people in Eretz Yisrael are rasha arumim, which is a very bad person. We'll see what this means in a minute. V'hamasi bito boger, v'hamashe bito bogeres. It's someone who doesn't let their daughter get married at that age of 12 and a half or 13. Atu hamasha bita bogeres lav rasha arum. Isn't he also a rasha? Isn't he also a terrible person? Be'akmimus. Arum here doesn't mean naked. It means akmimus a little bit. It says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, turning to the top of Ayin Vav Amud Beis, heading down to the Mishnah, which is a little more than halfway down. Hachi kamar, Zehu ani rasha arum. Who is the rasha arum that we talk about? Zamasha bito bogeres. It's actually the same exact thing. Rav Kahana mishum Rabbi Akiva, again, just the same people's names, but this drasha doesn't have much to do with what we're talking about. Amar Rav, I'm sorry. I'm Rabbi Kiva. Habe zahir min hayoatzcha lefi darko. You should be careful when someone gives you advice that benefits them. You know, and like I get these phone calls every birthday from like the guys who want my business for for financial planning. I got that. No one in our community, someone outside our community would call me every year for like 5 years. Yeah, I know what you're doing. It's for your benefit. I got it. I understand. So like I have to grain it with a little bit of grain of salt. I have to say I'm not sure how this works. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Hamasi es bito lezakein. If a man does in fact marry off his daughter to an older man who's not interested in tashmish hamita, ve'amasi isha livno katan, or if a man marries his daughter to a boy who is not yet capable of tashmish hamita, ve'hamachzir aveda legoy, or someone who is going to return a lost item to a goy.
He finds a woman who's older, but no, his son,
What?
a baby son, and he gets his son a wife who's a grown-up lady. With no cut, his son.
What is the difference?
Masi Isha. He's not marrying off, it's not the father, we're not talking to the father of the daughter, we're talking to the son.
Hamasi isha, a man marries off a woman.
Cut, son.
Oh.
Same result.
Same result, but I flipped the families,
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
And for some reason.
You should never mix up machatana. And what?
It should work the other way too, I imagine.
I can't imagine it would be any different. Wait, that just spun my brain around. Hold on one second. Hamasi isha livno katan. A man basically allows his son to marry a woman. His son, who let's say he's prepubescent, whatever the age is, a 7-year-old, right? The language is odd. It should be Hamasi bno liisha, which is totally why I misread it. But I still, the language is really odd. No? Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not crazy.
That's what I always wonder about who marries off who.
I mean, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because we keep talking about Hamasi Bito. This is Hamasi Bino. Well, who's in the driver's seat? So to speak?
In this phraseology, it's very odd, actually. I don't know why the syntax is this way, but it's definitely odd. But thank you for the correction. So that means that a man allows a fully grown woman to marry his young son, who's not yet capable of tashma shemita, and v'hamachzer avedo lagoy, which seemingly is really not part of this discussion. All of Akasuv Medaver Leman Svos Haravas Hatzmea Lo Yove Hashem Sloach Lo Hashem will not forgive you. We're talking about a case of Harove and Hatzmea, where there is a thirst between the two, namely, where there's really, you've created a scenario of want, which is not a good thing. That's the common denominator, and that is Lo Yislach Lo. Okay, says the Gemara Meisvei, hold on one second. Are you sure that it's true that someone's not allowed to marry a katan who's not capable of tashmish hamita? Ayin vav midbei, 7 lines down. Ha'oeves ishto kegufo. If a man loves his wife the way he cares for his body, ha'mechabda yoser migufo, and he honors her more than his own body, v'hamadrich banav uvnosa b'derech yeshara, and a person who, at least from their side, they were madrich their sons and daughters in the derech yeshara. And look at this, v'hamasiyan samuch lepirkan, and a father who marries off his children close to the age when they are at the perek, namely when they are capable of having tashmish hamita. Then all of akasav medaber, all the good stuff. All of akasav omer, I should say, v'yadata ki shalom alechu fakadata noch. These are good things, that you'll have a peaceful tent and you will not do any sins. What do we see from here? That it's praiseworthy to marry off your son when he is not yet capable of tashmish hamita. Now, mitzido, we want to make sure he's never tempted by taiva. But that goes against the previous Gemara that says Hamasi Isha livno katan, that the pasuk of Leman Svos Haravas Hatzmei applies. Says the Gemara Samach L'Pirkan Shine. I'm not talking about someone who's about to reach that stage when they're capable of tashmish hamita. That's pas pisalo. plenty of reason to assume that they'll be all fine and good. What we're talking about is a man marrying a woman to his son. I guess that this, what you pointed out, David, when a man is marrying a woman to his son and the son is not capable for many years of tashmish mitim. Okay, next, we're about a fifth of the way down. Tanu Rabbanan, ha'oev es shchenav, somebody who loves their neighbors, ha'makarev es krovav, and someone who makes their family members even closer, ve'hanose es bas achoso, and a man who marries his sister's daughter, his bas achoso, his sister's daughter, his niece, ve'amal v'selo la'oni b'shas dochko, and somebody who lends a coin to a poor person when they're in need, olav akasuv medaber oz tikra v'Hashem ya'aneh, and that is when that earns a person certain rights with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, that when you call, Hashem will answer. Ayin and the Rishonim, all the details, we just don't have time. And then lastly for today, a machlokas tanoim that we saw yesterday in a veiled reference of Dorshan, Mashmo's Dorshan Ika Beinahu, when we were talking about a machlokas Abai v'Rava in the previous blot, that was connected to a machlokas Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. So let's now dig in as to what is going on here. Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis have taught us in a brisa. This brisa can also be found in Maseches Yevamos. Oso ve'eshen. What pasuk is this talking about? I'll read the pasuk for you. V'isha sher yikach es isha ve'es ima. This is the din we've been talking about for a couple blot. If a man takes for himself a woman and her mother, zimahi, that's considered a zima, ba'esh yisrofu, they will be burnt in fire. Look at the language. Oso ve'eshen. He and them. So says the Gemara, what does he mean? He and them mean? Oso. Ve'es achas mehen divi Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel held that Ladina, the word eshen does not mean both of the women that he cohabited with, the Isha Ubita. It only means the man plus one of the women. Okay. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Oso ve'es shtehen. I disagree with you. The pasuk state, it's plural. Eshen is a plural word. Third grade conjunctions of Hebrew letter. Hen, hen, hen. It ends with the plural of the females, shtehen. Now, Lamaisa doesn't actually matter because when we darshan the psukim, we add in the other person according to Rabbi Shmuel. According to Rabbi Shmuel. So, my beinahu says the Gemara, really nothing. Amar Abaye, mashmaos darshan ika beinahu. Which one's part of the drasha, which one's not? According to Rabbi Shmuel, Midoraisa, I shouldn't say Midoraisa, whatever the pasuk means is that the man will die in this case in one of the women. And according to Rabbi Akiva, we don't need that for a drasha. Rabbi Shmuel Savar, Oso ve'eshen, Oso ve'es achas mehen. Why is it that Rabbi Shmuel learned the pasuk that it's always talking about one? Because after all, eshen is a plural word. Says the Gemara, and this always blows my mind, Shekain b'lashon Yavani korn la'achas hina. Eshen, the singular one. That's a fascinating thing. Why are we learning the Torah in Greek? Why didn't we learn the Torah? No, that's why I said it comes up in Shas all over the place. Spins my head every time. It's the same thing. And I'm sure there's a good answer. I just don't know what it is. But that's what the Gemara says, is that when Rabbi Shmuel looked at the Chumash and he saw the word Osova Hesen, he's like, let me think in Greek. Hina, the one. So that's why Rabbi Shmuel said what he said. And ve'em chamoso midrasha asya. And what we did is we added in eim chamoso. If a man were to cohabit with his mother-in-law and the mother of his mother-in-law, his grandmother-in-law, that's when the Isser kicks in. Rebbe Kiva Savar, no. What was his svara? Oso ve'eshen is Hebrew. It's not Greek. Oso ve'eshtehen, like any day school kid would have thought. I went to Hillel Torah. I wouldn't have thought in Greek. I would have read the Chumash, and al pi pashtus, without even blinking, I wouldn't have thought twice. Oso, the man, ve'eshen, and the two women that he cohabited with, I wouldn't even cross my mind. Obviously, Rabbi Shmuel doesn't need us to agree with him, but it's still fascinating that he holds that it's Greek. Ve'im chamoso hecha ksiva, hacha ksiva, and im chamoso is a part of this as well. So there's no nafkamina in halacha. The psakim are all the same. The question is how we do the limudim. All that is Abaye. Rava Amar, no. Chamoso la'achar misa ika beinahu. There is a difference between the two. There is a difference between the two of Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, and the difference is when a man cohabits with his mother-in-law after Misa. Chamoso la'achar Misa, when his wife already dies. Rabbi Shmuel savar, chamoso la'achar Misa b'sreifa. Rabbi Shmuel holds that once a woman is begeder your mother-in-law, she is always your mother-in-law, even if the wife dies. And therefore, she's chayeves and sreifa, even if the man sleeps with the mother-in-law when there is no wife. The Rabbi Akiva savar isura be'alma, which is an unbelievable switch, right? That there's no, yes, it's permanent, but it's not sreifa category anymore. When your wife is alive, then to cohabit with the mother-in-law is sreifa. But in this case, it is not sreifa, it's isura be'alma. We'll stop right here at the Mishnah, about halfway down on Ayin Vav Amud Beis. We'll pick up tomorrow night at the same spot. Wishing you all a beautiful night.